very much for joining us today for our Artist Talk with Max Early. I'm Maggie Onosorgan, the Program Manager at the Amerind. And as always, before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that the Amerind is located in southern Arizona on lands which the Otham, Hopi, Zuni, Yoeme, and Apache families have lived for generations. Traditions live on in vibrant communities, and we're very grateful for what all of these communities rich in history have to teach us. We would also like to thank our members and donors for making these free programs possible and for supporting Amerind's mission to foster and promote the knowledge and understanding of Native peoples of the Americas through research, education, conservation, and community engagement. To learn how you can assist the Amerind in supporting its mission by becoming a member or donor, please visit our website, amerind.org. And now next, a little housekeeping. Our next online talk will be Saturday, August 23rd at 11 a.m. with Dr. Gary Feynman from the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. He will be speaking on human governing and well-being and his ongoing research on how we can learn from our ancestors to make a better world for tomorrow. We're also working on another scholarly talk for July, so please watch our website for those details. And for anybody in the area of Amerind, we have a number of events planned for the summer, including heritage tours with Willie Adams, the great-grandson of our founder, William Fulton. We have a members luncheon, a stargazing event on August 14th, and a free movie night. So watch our website, of course, www.amerind.org for more details. The recording of today's talk will be sent to all our registrants, and it will be available to watch on our YouTube channel, Amerind Foundation, later this evening. If you have any questions today for Max, please type them in the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as possible after his reading. And today we're very pleased to have Max Early with us. Max is a talented poet as well as a potter, and he comes from the Pueblo of Laguna in New Mexico. Max earned his MFA in writing at the Institute of American Indian Arts and his BA in English from the University of New Mexico. His work has been published in many respected journals and publications, including Inkwell Journal, Poetry Northwest, Poetry Magazine, Poetry Foundation, and several others. Today, Max will be reading from his first book, Ears of Corn, Listen. His second book is soon to be published. Today, you will also see, hopefully, some of his examples of his pottery as well. So now please help me welcome Max Early.
Thank you, Maggie.
Yep.
I'd like to say hello to everybody, and just a few words in my native language is Karis, just to invite everybody and relatives. Koatsi sai hoba e sawatemishe da etze kamuna wa goikama sita e guisti so hinome Tsina Hanu e Kwa-ya Washch'ee hina achach. Hello everyone, friends and relatives. I'm Kamuna from Laguna Pueblo. I live in the village of Paguate, New Mexico. I am of the Turkey people and a child of the Bear Clan. Okay, let's listen. So my first poem I'll read is called In the Black Blue Hue of Sunrise Dawn. It's in my first published poetry book, Ears of Corn, Listen. In the black blue hue of sunrise dawn. In the black blue hue of sunrise dawn, Mother Earth keeps me warm. I pray and breathe on the dry flowers, an offering to the deer spirit. Consumed by the flame, my prayer goes up in smoke. Rainbow full of colors for the deer to see. They say, Mo poksh kashtsi gayanye shro ekoshe. Look at the beautiful rainbow. Let's go over there. Climbing the hill in pursuit, fresh deer tracks everywhere. Directly in front of me, Gaik Bashra, the rays of sunrise glisten on the antlers. We have found the rainbow. Now it's time to go home. Home to the mountain lion, singing hunting songs of praise, tribute and honor to the deer, corn pollen prayers scatter in the wind. Bless us again, dear spirit. So the deer have a sacred place in our community and families, and as hunting season approaches, it's part of sustenance, but it's also the deer spirit that blesses us. And we have dances during winter solstice and at Christmas time that commemorate the harvest, and also prayer that the deer will replenish us again with their being. And the next poem I read is a story that I wrote when I used to go deer hunting with my grandparents, my mom's mom and my grandpa, and this was the last time we went hunting together. Hoofs drifting across grass. November night in small town Cuba, warm cabin in lieu of chilly canvas, bedroll laid out. I sleep below my grandparents' motel bed. A sudden 3 a.m. request. Tro'o, let's go, she says. I sip coffee and scurry by the kitchenette stove. Grandpa's warming the truck up. On high desert pinon cedar hills, our campfire in dark beaming woods, bacon, eggs with bread on the flame, grandma's fried red chili flakes. Sunrise ashes bless our rifles. Guide us, mountain lion, and the mountain lion within me. Track fearless with patient pursuit. Mid-morning, bedded down in green leaf briar, a leaping gant of does hurtle through a thick sagebrush draw as fog drifts on thin forest air. My index finger points, but she corrects me with her pointed thumb motion. My head nods. I use my thumb to shorten the distance between hunter and game. Afternoon, we ride hills after hills across arroyos and valley clearings to a place I caught my deer the previous open season. I hike to an overlooking mesa top. Grandpa walks to the dry creek. Close by the truck, Grandma prowls with a red scarf over her head. I scout towards a large oak grove as quick sounds of leaves crush and crunch. I crouch down, my eyes focus on swift hoofs drifting across the grass. My head turns, I hear, woo! I sprint towards the mesa's cliff ledge. Grandma's hands raised sideways by her ears. She yells, Mame wa gacha, shetsuk dewewa. Peeling an orange, her gun leans on a rock. The buck runs to the mesa bottom and pauses within Grandma's range. She grabs her gun, her finger pulls the trigger, her rifle clicks and jams as the mule's deer's ears twitch. The buck bolts off like a field missile. She lowers her one chance, wishing we return to Grandpa's faded maroon pickup. My grandma sighs and says, Kaika, Kaika, all the way home, Kaika. Grandpa tells her, you're always saying, Iu'u, Frushanats. I'm cold, it's cold. That's why you didn't catch your deer. The following year, my grandparents both said it was too cold for them to go hunting. I brought back a buck for Grandma Linda and cherished the last time we went deer hunting. These are part of my new poems that will be in my second manuscript. This next poem is called Deer's Breath of Every Color. Winter rises southeast. Deer gnaw withered apples as morning star fades above Indigo Canyon. Concealed in tall feather grass, mountain lion nestles, his tan body mesmerized like a stone fetish. Sun blazes amber rays, snow powders the deer trail. A hunter whispers through mist his flowered prayer. Mukaich, Hashte, Mishkayu, Gomatsani. Mountain lion man, it's already morning. Help me. Climbing Hawk Mountain through blue juniper terrain, mountain lion leaps, an arrow blessed with pollen. Winter sets southwest, deer in shadow-tinged purple enters spruce treehouse on his breath of every color. My friend's niece, small girl, she's about 4 years old. She had never been to our deer dances during the winter time, and just seeing her excitement of the first time seeing the deer dance, I wrote this poem. It's called Delasia's Necklace. We enter to the sounds of bells. The hall's warmth evokes an imprint of my small self, standing by my grandparents. Their presence I sense in drums and singers' voices. Collective breath of all colors hovers above the leaping herd. Eagle and hawk feathers adorn the deer dancer's rhythmic scent. Forest evergreen, damp earth. Delasia puts her hand in mine. The seated crowd hinders her view. I lift her above the masses, a butterfly beyond reach. Her irises bloom to the choir and drum beats rumbling nearby snowflakes. I set her among the gold straw flecks glistening on the mud-plastered floor. Her body sways back and forth. She stands on tiptoe to see over the crowd. A camouflaged-faced hunter, a charcoal-faced hunter in camouflage shirt and jeans, trots towards the small child. He places a coral bead necklace over her head as she smiles at her new delight. This next poem I'm reading is called Flowers in the Deer's House, and it was part of School of Advanced Research Grounded in Clay exhibit, which is now in St. Louis, Missouri. And I wrote two poems about two of their potteries that they have in their collection. So this poem is a visual poetics poem, expressions poem that I wrote about this huge pot, this extra large pot that was purchased from the village that I live in Paguate, New Mexico in 1928. And this poem is called Flowers in the Deer's House. Painted black line in circles, damp earth oya, opening a subtle path to skyward realms. As cirrus clouds spiral nearby rainbows. Light and shadow crosshatch distant rains. Shock, sound of shock waves slice like knives. Thunder to arouse Sitshrui. The horned water serpent ribbons through winds of red leaves and feathers, while rainbirds stream into dark caverns. Water streaks down a stalactite as she applies a stroke of black paint to the slipped white clay surface. With curves, hooks, and pointed beaks, she bends willow to form a hoop, a drumstick tied with yucca fiber. Sonic voice of water drum ripples as buds of mandalora and dahlia bloom on adobe floors and walls. Outside the house of fluorescence, burnished moon of ancient pursuit, halos night sky when stellar trail glistens north. Cosmic sunflower guides her journey to a trio of books standing silent in the deer's home at winter solstice. She sketches the eyes of the deer. She whispers a blessing of fortuity to enhance her man's chances of game. From mouth to slender neck to mid-body, she paints reddish-brown line to an arrow-tipped heart above a belly of Baya. She exhales as she exits the opening of thoughts and prayers infused on clay. Prosperous hunt, abundant rain, long life. Unfired masterpiece nestles in her lap. She lays her yucca brush aside to rest and daydreams of her distant relatives. Her finger rolls the silver pearl necklace she wears night and day, a gift from her father when her mother returned to Laguna. In the days of horse and wagon trails, a child from the Zuni Coyote clan, she treasures designs of her family's father's kin. In the fired great Oya, she pours cascades of blue from bare grass baskets, storing shelled corn for winter sustenance. Next, I'd like to switch over to some clay poems that I wrote. I have this connection with being a potter and just the hours at times that you paint the pottery. A lot of images and subject matter comes into mind. This poem is called Clay Expressions. Handed down part of ourselves here on Nyahatsi, Mother Earth. Potters, continuance, journey with collective coil. White Ipsha slip, damp, burnish like snow on clay. Nourish our Pueblo people with communal spoken thoughts. Clay woman's matriarch molds potter's hands. Stone expression weathers time. Our creativity blessing, enduring tranquility. Rise up, fellow potters. Bestow this gift to our youth. Instill your artistic passions towards our precious children. Amu irak demishe, so this gift may never end. Pueblo youth now, generations forward, may sustain the legacy, our ancestors' vision. This next poem I read is also from the School of Advanced Research, grounded in clay exhibit. And this was a dough bowl that I had seen throughout my career as a potter, and I'd seen it in different museums, and it eventually landed up in the Vilcek Foundation in New York City. And I thumbed through some photographs and I found this pot, this dough bowl, and I wrote a poem, an Afro poem. It's called Convergence of Clay. I see you in a pottery book with your maroon cactus petals. I long to enhance your veracity, then hold you in my palms. I see you at Morningstar Gallery. Your vines curl in waves of faded beauty. If I knew where you came from, I would take you there. I see you in a headdress, 7 red-tipped feathers of sunrise and sunset. I adore your resilient design on vintage skin. I see you at a gallery. Your seasoned interior of vermilion and beige reveal a footprint of infinite recipe blends. I see you at the Denver Public Library, sitting on top a bookshelf. The elevated stance displays your symmetry like a regal crest. I see your reflection in a pond as bees caress your honeycomb. A flight of stairs ascends on your painted cloud blanket motif. I see you in another Pueblo Treasures book. The portrait captures a glimpse of your durable longevity. I don't see you for over a decade until I thumb through a file of photos as your image entices my potter's eye. I know I'll see you when I request your presence in Santa Fe. Your flight from New York lands before the lockdown. After a postponed year, I see your chaffed mask of antiquity. My hands embrace your rare and vigorous shape. I see you don't have a distinct spirit line. I'll select a place to cross your threshold of earthenware permanence. I see your dough rising from the adobe bread oven. Your generous tasks of mixing, sifting, and storing food for feast days and dances. I see your matriarch stirring blue corn mush for matzini, paper bread. Her fingers slide batter from your bowl onto a flat stone griddle. I see her filling your deep bowl with apples from the orchard, the last harvest you'll see prior to leaving your birthplace. I see you were a kitchen heirloom, lonesome for your home. Amot yuni, hait dashranesh, yeah. My compassion for you, pottery, where have you been? This next poem is called South Parallel Lines, and it was a poem I wrote for the Young exhibit in San Francisco, part of their exhibit of Native American collection. And this poem is called South Parallel Lines. Clay vessel of concentric coils, cured from curved base, moistened, laden earth rises to Oya form. As water seeps through fossilized pores, minute path ushers in the potter's breath, rendering beauty of open air on the surface of Laguna line. 4 white doves and red butterflies encircle mountain black clouds to secure a downpour in place on the parched fields of Nabomo. Down Breath Trail Road, ducks submerge beaks in damp ochre red soil, grubbing at roots below the surface of rain puddle reflections, calling forth the mist realm. Sunrise refract vertical light under a rim of interlaced hearts. An ethereal prayer sustains painted motif. This next poem I read, I wrote at a poetry retreat in Portal, Arizona, and it was right when we had our lockdown in March of 2020. And I was trying to get hold of my mom, and she wasn't answering her phone, and I was getting worried about her. So this poem was generated in class, and in Arizona they have several mountain ranges, but they're isolated from the rest of the desert region, and so these forest regions are called Sky Islands. So this poem is called Sky Island. Why doesn't she ride a wheel? Gila monster, hissing ants, tossing 2 cube granite crystals coated with mud tracks. Eldest sister of Turkey clan, a ceremonial coiling of clay. We're migrating, soaring towards a sky island. She lifts his black braids on pine sap, streaming in rainstorm, wailing. She ties 4 white duck feathers and forms them into a lightning bolt. Flashing through sea deserts in the hail, they trail a deer to levitate a new song. Green yucca, what is it like to paint a mask? He plants her before spring thaw, wrapped in a Pendleton blanket. His sorrow sinks the earth. As I was at school at IA, we had to write 5 poems a month, and I got invited to a friend's birthday party and my truck broke down. So I wrote a poem for my friend instead, since I was stuck at home writing poems that day. And this poem is called Bessie's Transmission for Kathleen Wall. If only we had lit up the candles on your cake. If only I could hear your party of mud song. If only I could have a cheerful toast to let this bliss dashboard like a bluebird. If only we weren't in the fall kiss of your water-clad summer. If only we didn't have to dry our clay pots and never sand away. If only Mama Fanny could still braid your pigtails tighter than tight. If only we could finish a pottery mask that whispered global warming. If only your clay clowns could text and eat watermelon at the same time. If only I could hear you sing Happy Birthday, Mr. President, and shout impeach, 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 while impersonating Marilyn Monroe standing above a subway vent. If only you had shouted, isn't it delicious? If only you had taught me to make Hamish enchiladas. If only you could be next year's native treasure. If only the transmission wasn't in the shop. If only roads could diffuse the distance, we could have danced even after the crowd left. If only I could have wished you a long life and drove back to Laguna with a bluebird behind the wheel. This next poem I'll read is a commemoration to the grinding stones that our clan women use to grind our clay for our prayers, for our meals, for our families and community. And every clan had their own grinding house and a set of grinding stones. And a lot of the old songs have passed away. So this poem commemorates the spirit of the grinding stone and the women, clan women that used to sing those songs, or still sing those songs yet, and it's just called The Stone Shaped by Song. Only once at dawn I unearthed a grinding stone beneath a dirt floor at the old horse corral. She sang Ya'ana clan songs when there were those songs in the field now barren and bursting with tumbleweeds. The land parched as potted polenta or peeled paint. Her skin, black lava, her hair, shelled white corn. Her body curved like a half-moon crescent. Her face, rounded smooth, had thinned from where, like sand, the oceans washed ashore in the rise and fall of tide. A Hawaiian black sand beach, a flavor of salt woman, red seaweed, and slender green. Shitrani yucca, heirloom corn seed, planted on a warm autumn day. Sprouts then fades as songs wither into stillness, or bushes of sumac berries in the abandoned field. Red fruit the deer devour, tart and tangy as hibiscus lemon tea. A mist arises when the stone recalls the clan's women's voices. Singing her songs, she remembers the rhythmic milling sound of mano and matate. She craves cornmeal and ground wheat. She cherishes the last song sung to her. She hums forgotten tones. I lift her up and say, come home with me, rest in Cusco's garden, sing with me. I'll go ahead and switch over back to Ears of Corn Listen and read a couple of poems from there. This poem was about a polishing stone that my grandmother gave me. And traditionally, Pueblo pottery is made by women, And my grandmother would tell me I could paint the designs, but it couldn't work with the clay. But nowadays there are both male and female potters, and it's part of our income and livelihood. But this poem, my grandma gave me this polishing stone, which enabled me and gave me courage to become a Pueblo potter. Grandma Linda's polishing stone. And there's several words in Keres. Tsina is river. Mame anima gusa. Gusa is, it's really nice. You sure know how. Tashkana are old pottery shards. And mucka is a gourd dipper. Grandma Linda's polishing stone. Before I began to work with Laguna clay, I was told only women could make pottery. Traditional ways heated by my grandmother. Yet she gave me one of her polishing stones she'd sought from a bed of cool Tsina water. This entrusted gift soon sparked my fire. A dying tradition urges intent and artistic fire. Curiosity in me revealed the charisma of clay. Determined and self-taught, I built a large water olla to honor the matriarchs of Pueblo pottery. Breaking gender taboos didn't turn me to stone. I had an approving smile from my grandmother. Mame anyame gusa, said grandmother. Now find someone to teach you how to fire. You can always use any one of my grinding stones to crush and crumble tashkana and clay. Remember, your spirit is part of the pottery, just as clouds cradle life through rainwater. She said, when it rains, let's collect fresh water. I watched wrinkled hands of my grandmother gather rain from barrels with bowls of pottery. Bring them inside while I warm up by the fire. Now pour some rain in the powdery gray clay. Treasure this mud dough like a precious stone. Not long ago, we used corn cobs and sandstone to smooth wares, later wiped down with water. We burnished only at daytime, slip of white clay. Many customs grow old, like your grandmother. When I'm gone, feed me when you built a fire. Stay diligent and obtain patience with pottery. When she departed, I gave her my first pottery, lustered white with my heirloom river stone. We collected and burned her clothes in the fire. Her mucka still hanging where she'd ladled water. Musing continuum with my dear grandmother, displaying her ways of working with our clay. My grandmother knew I would fall in love with clay. Holding reddish brown stone, I buff my initial fire. Ritually smashing pottery, she sends us wondrous water. This next poem I read is called Matrilineal Winter. And it's a poem about my mom and my two aunties, my other two moms. And they inherited my grandmother's house. My mom's sitting right here. Say hi, Mom. Say hi, Mom. And I'm her caregiver. I watch over her. And so this poem is called Matrilineal Winter. Traditionally at Laguna, the house is given to the oldest daughter. At Acoma, the house is given to the youngest daughter. The house belonged to Grandma Marie, given to her oldest daughter Jane. Soon Jane gave Sister Clara the family home. Three sisters in their winter share their mother's house. They are Orion's belt, wintry sister stars. Three stars softly fading, reminisce festal shadows, mom's chili stew cooking, 7-Up in the Frigidaire. Three sisters embrace home, but not like they used to. Keep moving around, more aches flare. What do we do with your house, Mom? We feel bad that you're getting old. We'll help you when we can. We miss the old Jew. Serious oldest daughter, humorous middle girl, cheerful youngest baby, wintry sister stars. This next poem from Ears of Corn Listen is a poem that was written for my son Alan, my youngest, my baby. And I made a cradle board for him. And one of my sister-in-laws that lives up in Shiprock, she's a beater. And there's three, they're made out of willow. So I bent the willow and then she beaded the willow, and the beaded willow hoops were so beautiful, they looked like a rainbow. And so his Cochiti grandfather, we named him his Indian name, Kashchatsi. And so this poem is called How You Got Your Name, for Alan. One tree struck by lightning, fashioned into a cradle board, protect my little one. Three tall river willows chosen, shaped and bent like an arch, keep my baby safe. 4 buckskin loops on each side, zigzagged lace belt like lightning, hold my child secure. 6 colors of the sun sought, sewn beads around your willows, comfort my son to sleep. Grandfather said, your cradle board was charming, so we named you Kashchatsi, Kashchatsi, rainbow, my rainbow. So I'll go ahead and read a few more from Ears of Corn Listen. I was doing research at the Smithsonian of their pottery collection they had, and I went through several thousands of pots, and one day I was there to look at some old photographs of interiors of homes at the Natural Museum of Natural History, and I stumbled upon a collection of photographs from 1879, and I found my great-grandfather's photo from the Carlisle Indian Industrial School. And I remember my grandmother telling me that her father went to school there, and so he was given a new name, a new American name, and his last name was changed. His name was Henry Anaya, and they gave him the name Henry. So this poem is called Henry Akoya. In Indian civilization, I am a Baptist because I believe in immersing the Indians into our civilization, and then we get them under, holding them there until they are thoroughly soaked. Captain Richard H. Pratt, the founder of Carlisle Indian School. 1. Akuyame Yakahano. Recruited for the Indian school experiment, earrings, Akuyame was your first name. Corn Clan, Yakahano was your last. Taken far away from your Laguna home, Pennsylvania bound to be transformed. Kill the Indian and save the man. Carlisle Indian Industrial School can. Stripped from traditional influences and dress, Henry is your new American first name. Akuyemi will be your last. A military uniform, hair cut short, serve time and learn the foreign tongue. Ward to the assimilation process flung. Photographed in 1879, portrait of a Laguna Pueblo teenager. Henry Akuyemi, he did not smile, altered in boarding school clothes. Kill the Indian, save the man. Carlisle Indian Industrial School can. Part 2, Hot Bushcha is chewing gum, and there's in the photo archives I found a black and white picture, great-grandfather Henry Akoya at the Smithsonian's Natural Museum of Natural History. I couldn't wait to tell Grandma Linda that I found her father's picture in Washington, D.C., but the excitement made me forget she was gone too. I recall my grandmother. She never liked it when me and Grandpa and I chewed gum. She told us, "Atye, it's dirty," but once in a while she would chew along with us. I showed my mother her grandfather's picture from 1879. She told me, my grandfather never liked it when we kids chewed gum. He told us, "Demershu mus Kumucha, looks like the cat's ass. So a little humor there. This next poem is a concrete poem that I wrote, and we have our bread ovens that came from the Spanish, from the Moors, and when the Spanish came over and conquered New Mexico and part of New Spain and Mexico, before this was even United States, these bread ovens we still use to this day, and we call them Paguate, the bread house. And so this poem is called Indian Betty Crocker. Kamash Goyo, old woman spider lives there. The bread house, Paguate, Yoni, sandstone domed room with a dirt floor, black gray from charcoal ashes. Hakani Mishja, Gani Goots, cedar wood split and chopped for the fire, piled high. Ubayani, match, ignites the wood. See rising flames come out the east door. Snow, smoke roars up through the small opening, straight up to the sky. Huaka, Bashru, Gacha, watch out, very hot, ash white coals, ready to mop out. Test the floor with oatmeal. Ask Spider Woman to help bake the bread just right. Yena, it's cooked. Take it out. I'll go ahead and finish up a last poem from Ears of Corn Listen. And this poem was written for my dear friend Rose, who passed away from pancreatic cancer the year I graduated in my undergrad at UNM in 2010. And I wrote this poem in honor. It's called Ode to Radio Rose. On Sunday afternoon, I sat down and listened to 89.9 Singing Wires program. The dedication that day was in honor of Rose Ebom. She was a DJ on their show for over 10 years. Rose was my longtime friend since the fall of 1984. I first met Rose in class at Albuquerque TVI when she was my lab partner in digital applications. We both ran in TVI's Runner Club. Our friendship flourished over the years. We always bumped into one another at malls, feasts, fairs, art shows, and bike rallies, powwows. I could always count on Rose to make it to some reception dinner I was having, like Paguate Feast, my wedding, my son's birthdays, and most recently, my mom's birthday banquet. I always gave her some outside oven bread before she left. Even at the 2008 Santa Fe Indian Market, Rose stopped by my booth and we planned where to go to dinner. We ended up at Red Lobster with Don, Debbie, and Norvin. She knew how to make you laugh, but best of all, Rose knew how to be a dear friend. Hearing the sad news, Norvin said, we lost our Rose, Radio Rose. Now I long for your reception. Dear friend, no more on the station. Rose on the air, Radio Rose, the rose of my reception. Encouraging Rose, we ran together for our causes. Your strive always kept us going. We danced and laughed at Yo's wedding. Rose on the air, Radio Rose, rose of my reception. Reassuring Rose, you brought us new friends. Bring us together now. Broadcast your love to our people. Rose on the air, Radio Rose, rose of my reception. Leaving when roses first bloomed, traveling transmission lines. Hear me, Rose, a shout out to you. Tuning in your voice, Rose on the air, Radio Rose, rose of my infinite reception. Thank you for listening. Kwa-ya Washch'ee. And if we have any questions, go ahead and take over, Maggie.
Thank you, Max. Let me see if I can pull up your slides. Give me a second. Let's see. All right, hold on. Okay, whoop. Oh, here we go. Okay. And if you want to say anything, Max, while these show. Whoop, happened to it. Here we go. And then just tell me when to flip. Here's your first one.
Okay, this is one of my Oyas. It's a larger water vessel that has a concave bottom. So the ladies would go down to the river and get drinking water for the family and bring it back home. They balance the pots on their head. So this design work on this piece is there's corn plants on top by the rim, and there's a band of rainbow going across. And then in the middle of the pot, you have rainbirds flying around fields of corn, different colors of corn. Go ahead, next slide. This slide is one of my poem pots that has my poem Earthen Desires on there. And this piece will be displayed at the University of New Mexico's Maxwell Museum next year. It's a sneak preview, you get to see the pot. It'll be on display at their exhibit in the fall of 2026. And the imagery on the pot is part of what the poem is. So I call it poetry. This is a canteen with a turkey walking out of the canteen, and this is my clan, also my mother's clan, our mother's clan. We go back on the matrilineal side, and so this canteen, there's a saying in our Pueblo, when you hear lightning and thunder, you pull on your hair, and they say the turkeys are pulling on your hair to let your hair grow longer. This is another water canteen I made. It's called a shpuna. So the design work on there is prayer for rain. You see the four directions, and there's like a sunflower symbols around, small like down feathers of clouds, and the kiva steps incorporated into the, and it sort of has that, you can hold it in a way with the rim, so it kind of looks like white squash. This is one of my other pots, which is a rainbird on there, and it had the body of the rainbird and the curves of the beak, and there's some star patterns on top. And this is another pot with sun on the side coming out, the rays of the sun, and there's could be a quail or a cardinal going after, holding a branch of berries as he's cruising through the sky. This pot I made for, I used to work for Intel for 15 years as a semi-field conductor engineer, and the company I worked for at the time was Lam Research, and they asked me to come up with a pot for their office. And so the equipment we used were called rainbow systems, and so there's a rainbow band on here, and there's several triangles, and that was their modem, was plasma they were using to etch the wafers in the computer industry. So this pot sort of has a conglomeration of both my traditional designs and also the company logo.
I think that might be the last one, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, if there's any questions too,
So I don't see any questions, but I have one for you. Who are some of your influences in both in writing and in pottery?
let's see, in writing, a lot of them came from just some of the older traditional poems at first when I was a young poet. So I'd look at Walt Whitman, also Robert, let's see, there's, trying to think of some other names. Most of the more modern poets too, from the turn of the 20th century, sort of towards the surrealism era. There was a poet in New York, which was awesome book to read, and it was a Spanish poet from the 1920s, and his work is he only wrote one book of poetry because he was executed there in Spain. I'm trying to think of his name right now. It doesn't ring a bell. But also just some of the other additional poets, indigenous poets that I had an opportunity to work with. Sherm Bitsui, Joe Harjo, Jennifer Forrester, Sante Frazier. They were my mentors at IAA. And when I went for my bachelor's degree, I went through a bunch of traditional poems, forms, and just trying to develop my craft. So by going back to school for my master's, I was able to have more paints to my palette to come up with more imagery-driven poems that use active verbs and adjectives, and more or less create an image in the reader's mind. So that's where most of my new poems will be coming out from. And I'm looking at getting my book published, or my manuscript published this summer. So I'm looking for publishers at the moment and getting that out, to getting my second manuscript put to bed.
Yeah, we've got a couple questions too.
It was Lorca. Lorca was the name of the poet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So one from James.
Okay.
Are all your pots coil work, or do you throw your pots too?
All Native American pottery is through the coil method. So I'll start off with a clay pancake, or like a tortilla. So I roll out the tortilla and then I put it into a mold, a base, and from there it dries a little bit until the clay is a little hard, and then the rest of the pot is made with coils. So I'll build up 2 or 3 coils, and I'll use a gourd to smooth out the inside and outside of the walls of the pot, and then I keep building my pot with coils all the way to the rim.
And then one from Kate. What time period did men begin making pottery? Kindly, Kate.
I would say probably after the Santa Fe Indian Market emerged in the 1920s. Majority was there was Maria Martinez, and her husband used to help her paint her pottery, and he would help with, with the firewood, and help her go to gather the clay. I would say when the pottery production came into to that era where Pueblo pottery was more of not just used in the community, but became an art form. So from the 1920s on, and it became more prevalent, I'd say, in the 1950s and 60s, and so that's when the genre roles switched over.
Here's an interesting one. How do you allow grief to shape your poetry without letting it consume the voice of the poem? And how do you know when the writing has begun to transform the pain, if experienced, rather than simply relive it?
That's a good question, because at
Yeah.
times when you do have grief and pain in your life, I've had advice from other mentors saying that you should wait at least 6 months before writing a poem that's close to your heart, because it is hard to write about, and so you have that time to reflect, going through that period of grief. So, but there are times, even when I'm reading my poems, like the one that I spoke about my grandmother, and then we burned her clothes in the fire, where I can hear my voice crack up a little bit, like I feel that emotion building in. I can feel her presence when I read that poem. So it's still there, and it still reminds me of how we lost our loved ones, but at the same time it helps us to cope.
Yeah. Here's kind of another related one from Chris. Would you tell us how much of an influence your family had on your art? Did they have influence on your poetry?
Mainly on my pottery, because my grandmother was the one that would make pottery with her Acoma girlfriend, and she had little pieces. And I started just painting her pieces first, and painting the pottery, the designs on there, but I didn't work with the clay until I went back to school at UNM, and then I was doing ceramic work. I was also started making moccasins and drums. My father-in-law from Cochiti was a drum maker, and my mother-in-law was a storyteller maker. So when I became a potter, I had to speak to several of the women of the Pueblo. My grandmother-in-law from Cochiti, Juanita Aquero, she gave me some Laguna clay that someone had gave her when I first started, and brought a big uh, bag or like a big sheet with clay in it and said, "Here's your clay." And so I was blessed with that clay. It was kind of like a calling. And then so we'd go out, me and my father-in-law, and look for this paint that we use. It's more of like a binder. It's the mountain bee plant, Rocky Mountain bee plant, and we call it a wak, and that's kind of like a binder you mix with your black paint. And we went out, we're picking these plants, and we got a big bag, Ziploc bag of the wild spinach, and took it to his mother's house. And she started laughing. She goes, "You only get a couple drops out of that. You got to get the whole plant and boil it up, and throw in some rusty nails, and you'll get And so just by learning that, I spoke to to the old grandma about how to mix our clay, how much temper to put into the clay to get a workable clay. I talked with Ramona Pinochet from Incinel, and she gave me my first paint rock. And then one of the Laguna potters, Gladys Paquin, she also taught me how to fire. I didn't know how to fire my pottery, so I met her at Indian Market, and just the right way to speak to people. And when you introduce yourself, you knock on their door, you sit down, have a cup of coffee with them. If you're asking something of them, you give them a gift, or you bless them, and not just knocking and say, "Hey, teach me how to fire," or "Teach me how to do this." They always teach us in our Pueblo ways to be respectful of one another, especially the elders. So when I would go to talk to these people, I would always get to know them first, and then I would ask them and always bless them with a gift or something in return, reciprocity. With poetry, it was more of I wasn't self-taught with poetry. I didn't dabble with. I went back to school for my bachelor's in 2006, and I was going to become an attorney. So I started taking some classes. I didn't take my first fiction class until my sophomore year, but discovered that I liked writing, and then I switched my major from pre-law to poetry to creative writing, and from there, just started. Found out that I had a knack for poetry, and then all the stories and the legends and just different things that my grandparents told me. It's like I needed to capture those, and plus our language is dying out. Not too many of our younger generations speak our Keres language, so that's part of my being is to keep that going, to encourage the youth to write a word or two, a sentence in Keres, but incorporate it into a poem. And in that way, they memorize the words, they memorize the phrase, and it gives tribute. And hopefully, the youth will fall in love with our language again.
Yeah. So one last question before you go, one from Anne. Wonderful poems. Thank you for sharing. Do you consider yourself a potter or a poet first?
I'd say both, because it's sort of like putting on different hats. So you can be a mechanic, or you can be a jack of all trades, but it's like it's seasonal, because I have my shows that I go to the Santa Fe Indian Market in August. It's coming up, so right now I'm starting to work with my clay and getting the pieces ready, my inventory ready. Then I have another show in March at the Herd Museum in Phoenix, and so those are times where at least 2 months in advance you have to start working on clay. So I have this set schedule, and then with poetry, it comes and goes. It's like a trigger subject or something I see in the environment or something. Oh, that'd make a good poem. So I'll write down or take a photograph. And right now I'm working on crossing both poetry and pottery. That I look at these old antique potteries that are in collections at different museums. So I just came back from Vermont in April, and there's going to be a new catalog book coming out at this museum. It's not published yet, but it'll be out next year at their new museum in Sherburne. And so I'm writing 2 poems that are be based on visual poetics of those old pots. So it's like the pot speaking to me, and I write it down and give that pottery a voice.
Well, let me tell people how they can order your book and where you'll be next, and then I'm going to pass it over to you. So you can order his book, his current book, by emailing him max_early@yahoo.com. It's $30. It includes shipping and handling. He also has a Facebook page, which I'll put all of this on the email that I send to everyone. He will be at Santa Fe Indian Market on August 16th and 17th, booth number 239, and you can also find his pottery at King Galleries in Santa Fe.
Thank you to the Amarillo Museum, and appreciate your words of encouragement, and I look forward to seeing all of you soon. Kwa-ya Washch'ee. Thank you. Bye-bye.